Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow, Public Speaking and Presentations, and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I'll now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. Tonight, our featured guests are Cicely Parnas, a cellist, and Madalyn Parnas-Möller, a violinist. Together, the sisters perform as the award-winning chamber ensemble Duo Parnas. Also joining us tonight is Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California. Cicely, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Simeon.
So Cicely, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a cellist. As you know, I went to Indiana University where I got my artist diploma. I live in Minneapolis now and do a little bit of everything in addition to the classical cello that I do with recitals and concertos and stuff. I also do arranging and composing and singing and songwriting and yeah, a little dash of this and a dash of that.
Fantastic. Madalyn, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
With pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a violinist. I'm the older sister, no, which is true. But I live in Los Angeles. I've been here for about 5 years. I also went to Indiana University with Cicely. We got to do our artist diplomas together, which was so much fun. And now I live what I call the LA hustle, which is a combination of solo performing, chamber music, teaching. I'm finishing my doctorate. I do gigging and freelancing and just a whole bunch of stuff. And when I'm really lucky, I get to travel somewhere and meet up with Cicely and we get to play together.
So Madalyn, tell us a little bit about your family. I understand that you come from a renowned music family. Is that right?
Yeah, in a way, we do kind of come from this legacy from Leslie Parnas, who is our paternal grandfather, extraordinary cellist of the 20th century and still with us. He's in Florida. Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic growing up in a family with him kind of this, shadow, but also inspiration.
Can you tell us a little bit about Leslie Parnas, about him as a cellist?
Yeah, sure. So Leslie Parnas is this fantastic, legendary cellist who he was one of the first winners of the Tchaikovsky competition when it first opened up for cello in the 60s. I think he won in 1962. And then he was a founding member of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. He has this fabulous pedigree of performing with the greatest musicians of the world. I mean, we grew up with pictures of him with Yehudi Menuhin playing Brahms double, and Sirkin and Laredo doing Beethoven triple, and Casals, who he was very close with and studied with. So he had a very rich and successful career.
Okay, and so being the older sister, how come you started violin and not cello?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it goes with my personality somehow a little bit, but I did not like the violin at all. Actually, it was our parents' choice to have us play certain instruments, but I had a deal with my mom that I only had to study violin for 2 years and then I could quit. And I was simultaneously studying piano, which I was in love with. And I still love the piano so much. I think you're probably going to see that later in the show. But after the 2 years was up, it was almost 2 years, and I switched teachers. And to this day, I call her Aunt Laura. She changed my life, and she's like the reason that violin became my voice.
So Cicely, tell us about growing up in this family. I mean, so Madalyn, she had a deal where she could play violin for 2 years and then stop. Was that kind of forced upon you, or did you make a different agreement or not enter into agreement at all?
Lots of
I don't specifically remember, actually. I think my parents were big believers in a liberal arts education. So playing instruments was a big part of that. And so to a very large extent, certainly at the beginning, was non-negotiable. And then became non-negotiable later for other reasons.
This is true.
Tell us, and so Cicely, so what is it? What was, bring us into this household. So are your parents also musicians, or what is it like? Because you told me, I bring this up because you told me, we weren't like every other family.
Yeah, it's true. So our parents are not musicians. Our mom taught piano when we were kids. So there was music in the house all the time. Professionally, she was a chemist and engineer. And my dad
and captain in the Air Force.
Right. And our dad is a software engineer. So he played a little bit of piano and picked up oboe a bit as an adult, which I loved. And it was really fun. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the family dynamic, I think there was a lot about it that was very dysfunctional. Growing up with that, we ended up with a lot of baggage attached to our music making and our relationship to our instruments and our careers. And it's taken a lot of time and ongoing healing. And if I maybe the best way to put it is that I'm seeing 2 therapists right now.
Okay, and so Madalyn, tell us about that, your experience. You're the older sister. Did you? I mean, did you tell Cicely, get ready? It's gonna be tough with this music thing, or how did that go?
I think I spent most of my childhood being jealous of Cicely. Cicely's extraordinary and incredibly talented, but as a child, I think I looked up to her a lot because things seemed in my perception to come so naturally to her. And I think it's fair to say I had probably more emotional attachment to music than she did when we were young. And so I felt like this burning desire to be like, well, why can't I just play in tune like she does? Or, having those kinds of thoughts. But I think we had a kind of a holistically unusual upbringing. We were homeschooled in a very rural part of upstate New York. And I would say we were simultaneously very ahead in certain ways. So, I mean, we were like, our parents, my mom had us graduating school really early. By the time I was 16, I started college, and I was done with college by the time I was 18. And we were playing professional concerts from the time we were early teens and being, driven around the country to go perform and do all these things. And our closest friends were adults and teachers and the like mentors we had in our lives. And then in other ways, we were like very much separated from the real world. And we didn't really spend much time with peers or people our age or young students like us that were going through the process of being a student and being a musician. So kind of there was like a dichotomy there.
It sounds to me kind of like Leopold Mozart taking his kids around Europe from the time they were very, very young and not just living an exceptional and in every sense, childhood. Is that right, Cicely?
In a way, yes. This is a new territory for us in that we've never talked about this stuff publicly. You're hearing it first. But yeah, so our mother has not been officially diagnosed, but I think she has something like borderline personality disorder. And what that looks like in a family dynamic is huge ups and downs emotionally and high stakes with everything that you do. So with music, if we lost a competition or something didn't go well, it was like death, basically. Like, who is going to take care of mom when she gets older? How are we going to become independent? How are we going to make a living? Everything had this fatalistic edge to it. And so when the stakes are so high all the time, you're kind of in survival mode constantly. And, for a lot of people growing up, I always get jealous hearing about other young people who grew up just like loving music and being like, oh, I enjoy doing it. For us, I think we did enjoy it, but it was so caught up in all this emotional baggage that I spent a lot of time asking myself if I'd be happier without it. And a great example of the kind of non-negotiation aspect, what happened when I was a teenager, and I actually asked my mom if I could quit because it was to the point where it was so unbearably difficult. And she said to me, you can either flip burgers or you can play your cello. Like, these are your two choices in life. So I felt like I was resigning myself to this thing that caused a lot of unhappiness, but was better than this other alternative I was presented with. So, so it's a lot, I know, but where this comes into relevance is in the messaging that surrounds us when we're starting something like this, which is like, it's more than a career, it's a lifestyle. And to add to what Madalyn said before about feeling jealous of me, I think there was a lot of negative messaging in how our mother pitted us against each other. And there was always like a comparison of who was better or worse at what thing.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. What a privilege to that you'd share such intimate information with us and let us into your family. Thank you very much. It's quite a privilege. So, Madalyn, is that was that intense with you too? That it was all or nothing? I mean,
Completely.
You were taking care of your mom's retirement already when you were.
We were 1,000% our mother's retirement plan, and she didn't mince words about that. So the stakes were really high in terms of what the consequences would be of us failing. And failing, all these words, success and failure, were just so kind of more powerful images in our mind rather than rooted in reality. And so there was only this intensely urgent and constant pressure to perform and to perform well, and not even to be necessarily good at what you did, even though we wanted to be and we were expected to be, but it was more about what the outcome of that is. So I was just going to add to Cicely's summary, which is simply that, the focus for all those years was completely on outcome, on what it's going to lead to, what the level of success you're going to reach is. And there was only really one path towards doing that. And I think in an industry like classical music, where it's already kind of this narrow little niche of the world and this area of the arts that's so specific, you already are kind of in this little box as a classical musician. And then within that, the options were reduced even further by this perspective of our family. And there were things that were just off the table, that were not considered as viable options as musicians, that I'm living now as a 30-year-old being like, wait, I could have been doing this 15 years ago. And had a great time. And you know, it's a process of relearning what it looks like to be a musician.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think our parents also expected our careers to look just like our grandfathers. And so that was a lot of pressure. And in addition to, the world has changed a lot since his time. So careers like his are extremely rare or maybe don't exist. So I think we both spent a lot of time kind of wondering, have we failed?
And just before I bring in Professor Lino Rivera, I wanted to ask you, but you've clearly celebrated a lot of successes at the same time. I understand there's a lot of stress, but what about those great moments? You must have had a lot. I mean, winning so many awards and being, I mean, how can you compare to your grandfather who lived in a different generation? I'm sure when he was at the top of his career, he also felt, well, you know, I'm only kind of halfway there. I'm kind of mediocre. There's still, I mean, haven't you already experienced great success, and how does that feel?
Well, it's in the mindset of children of someone with borderline personality disorder or narcissism or something in that area. The message is it's never good enough. So at my Carnegie Hall debut, after I finished playing, my mom said, you weren't yourself. You weren't there. So a lot of these successes, while externally they look awesome, internally they haven't felt like successes.
Wow, well, that's extraordinarily well said, Cicely. Madalyn, anything to add to that?
Yes, I mean, what she just said resonates with me a lot, because it's almost like each time you do reach a success, it isn't enough, and somehow it still doesn't prove this deep yearning to be a success in her eyes, I guess. But at the same time, I will say we have been so incredibly blessed and gifted with opportunity. I mean, we've traveled all over the world and played amazing concerts. We've done recordings together. In a funny way, I feel like these last couple years, especially, for myself personally, I feel like it's like a golden period of rediscovering my love of music and my love of the violin and performing and getting better. And so all the things that we've done together have been absolutely amazing. And I think we benefit from them more than we like to remember, because even if at the time we were going through stuff, you know, we look back and they're wonderful memories and wonderful things we carry with us forward.
And we're glad that you're here to share them all with us. Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California. Hi, Lino.
Hello. Good morning or good afternoon to both of you, Cicely and Madalyn. Thank you so much for sharing a very intimate detail about your personal lives and your journey towards music making. I could relate to that, you know, because my father also expected me, you know, having piano lessons. So in a way, at a certain level, I can relate very much to your experiences. Now, I have a series of questions, but let's just start with, when did you start really loving music? Because what I would say is that, you know, if you are forced to do something like that, you start hating playing the violin or the cello or any musical instrument, start hating music and just, you know, forget all about it. When did you start loving what you are doing?
Go ahead, Madalyn.
I have memories of being 4 and just loving the piano, just wanting to play the piano all day long. And I also have memories of being 8, 9, 10, playing violin and just being like, this is it for me. Like just, and it wasn't tied to the instrument so much as it was tied to the music that I could play on it. So I have very, very early memories of just feeling very, very passionate about it.
And I think for me, it didn't, I didn't start loving what I'm doing until the past couple years, where I expanded my definition of what it means, like what a career can look like for me. And so when I started arranging and doing some singing and songwriting and interacting with music in a completely different way, suddenly it started to feel like my own. And it took such a long time to figure out, like, how do I own this thing that I felt had been, you know, forced on me in some ways. But yeah.
Wow. So let's, Lino, maybe before you have a follow-up question, how about we get in some music and let's hear Cicely and Madalyn and their music. Here we go. This is Cicely's arrangement of the Bach Double Concerto. Fantastic, wonderful. So tell us, before we get to our first roundtable, could we tell us a little bit about this duo Parnas? I mean, I don't know that many siblings who enjoy doing anything together, and you apparently really like playing music together and do so very, very, very well. Madalyn?
Yeah, I mean, Duo Parnas is like the one of my most favorite parts of my musical life. I think because it's so rooted in everything from the music to our sisterhood to our journeys to I mean, every time we come together now, it just feels like a complete celebration of everything we've been through, our successes, our struggles. We've grown together, we've grown apart, we've come back together. It's always so much more than music. And then the music itself is amazing. So I love playing with Cicely.
Cicely, and for you, is that the same, that rediscovering music has a lot to do also with rediscovering your family as being with Madalyn, being your most important part of your family, I imagine?
Absolutely. It almost feels like we love being together and making music together, and it almost feels like it's in spite of everything that we've been through. And so it makes it all the more like feeling like it comes from a place of strength and conviction and yeah, as Madalyn said, a celebration.
And since you were very young, then you started playing together. Is that right? You've been playing music together for as long as you can remember. Is that right, Cicely?
Absolutely. Yeah, we started playing together pretty much since the moment we picked up our instruments. And you know, there was a lot of negative messaging around that as well, where like, you know, we were told that we wouldn't survive, we wouldn't be successful without each other, so we had to be a duo together. So there was a time where when we were in college, we weren't working together, and I think that was really healthy for us as a time for us to individuate and realize that, oh yeah, we really actually really love each other, and this is such an enhancement of our relationship now.
Madalyn, you're a little bit older than Cicely. Is that how you remember it?
2 years, yeah. Yes, it is. I mean, I think there was definitely this internal insecurity about, like, every time something went well, it's like, oh, it's because there's two of us, or it's because, you know, we're a duo. And so we didn't get the chance to, I think, grow in our own ownership of ourselves as individual musicians until we had that kind of period of years where we did our own thing. So I think Cicely's exactly right. It was sort of an essential part of us being able to come back together and do it from our own desire and our own conviction about what we were doing.
Okay, Lino Rivera has a follow-up. Lino?
Yes. Okay. You answered already one of the questions as to, you know, when did you realize that you would be successful, you know, to mend the rivalry that was happening when you were younger. Okay. The next question I have is, how do you rehearse? How do you get together? Because you two are living in two separate states. And so how do you maintain that unity, because you're in two different time zones? How do you manage that?
There's no distance too great. No, it's great because I mean, we're at a point where so much of our repertoire, I mean, we could just do it like that on very little work. But when we have a major project, it becomes like a fun artist retreat where, you know, I've flown to Minneapolis many times and stay with Cicely, and we just rehearse and practice all day for a week or 2 weeks. And we do that, you know, a couple times a year to do recording projects. And then the rest of the time, if we travel for concerts, we'll typically get into the concert city or venue like a couple days before and do some rehearsing together. But we also have taken a lot of advantage of technology now, and we do a lot of FaceTiming and sending recordings back and forth and exchanging our materials that way so that we can collaborate.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Okay, so okay, so the next question I have is that, do you stick with classical music only? And by the way, that was a fantastic arrangement, the Bach, the double concerto. Or do you compose yourself just for the two of you, or do you just stick with the strictly classical music repertoire?
Yeah, so in general, I've been doing you know, a lot of this is still new for me, but one of the first things that I started doing was, gosh, now it's been years now, but I started playing with a band called Break of Reality, and it's a cello rock band, 3 cellos and a drummer. And that was awesome because it was just like, it was a way for me to play the cello with kind of an abandon that you can't do in the classical world. So that was really liberating. And the founder, the co-founder of the band, Patrick Laird, is also the cellist of Brooklyn Duo, which is an incredibly successful piano cello duo he has on with his wife on YouTube, and they do classical style covers of popular songs. And so I started learning a lot from spending time with Patrick and seeing what he was doing and the really creative ways that he was using his classical music skills. And so one of my first arranging project was in collaboration with him, where we did the first Bach suite for 3 cellos. And from there, I was like, oh, well, I can do this with a lot of different stuff now. And so I started arranging for Madalyn and me. We haven't done any non-classical stuff as a duo yet. I'm also just kind of dipping my toes in the water of composition. So far, I've written a short kind of like ditty piece for solo cello. I have like a couple of attempts to try to write something for violin and cello that haven't gone anywhere yet. I need a lot more experimentation time. So the opportunities are opening up.
Okay. Let's have another look then, as Lino asked about different repertoire. Let's go from Bach to Kodai and look at Duo Parnas recording. Fantastic. So with that serious music making, how about let's begin our first roundtable. What is the daily routine of a musician? Is it healthy? So the first part, there are non-performance work days that we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about the performance days. So there are many days where you don't have concerts and you're still working, even though some people unfortunately consider that not to be work. But indeed, you are really working hard. It's just that you're preparing something and you're not playing live. Cicely, how about we start with you? What are your thoughts? What is the routine of a musician? Is it healthy?
Well, I think this is where kind of the lifestyle aspect comes into play, where it's not just a job that you can go to and then leave it at the office. There's this level of focus and dedication that you need to bring to the practice room every day. And because, the performances are the culmination of months and months of really serious preparation. So I would argue that once you've got the performance, you're all ready to go. That's less, the work's already been done. So the daily routine has to focus around your outlook towards that daily dedication. And Madalyn I think can speak a lot about that in a very good way.
Well, yes. So, I mean, the daily routine, especially most recently, in these past couple of years, I think COVID also kind of helped give space and time to consider these things. But I've gotten a lot more serious in the last year to 2 years about making sure I'm where I need to be to play my best. So on a daily basis, what does that look like? It means that on the practicing side of things, I've learned that there are certain things that need to happen in my practice every day. I need to be working on my technique and my goals in terms of the mechanics of what I'm doing beyond any repertoire that has a deadline. So even if I have 3 concerts next week, I need to wake up every day and still work on my scales and work on my Paganini. It's like taking your vitamins, right? It's like there are things you do that are just part of your lifestyle because they're good for you and they lead to long-term growth and health. We get into this very intense culture in new classical music where it's like, okay, just like struggling to survive from one thing to the next. And there's a lot of fear wrapped up in that. And I think when you can kind of say, okay, even though I feel like I need to practice 6 hours on this concerto, I could practice an hour on my Paganini and then 2 or 3 hours on my concerto, and I would accomplish way more in those 4 hours than if I just spent all this other time on the one piece that I'm supposed to play next week. So that's what it looks like on a practice level. And then on a personal level, I've always been a very like active person, but I never considered the relationship between that and my playing. So, I run several times a week and I do yoga, and like I try to just take care of myself physically and mentally so that when I practice, when I perform, I'm at my optimum.
So Cicely, Madalyn said things changed a lot during COVID. I mean, when it happened, and other guests on this show have said, everyone was told, that they had to social distance. And many musicians said, well, I've been doing that my whole life, actually. We're spending all this time by yourself, working, in a closed quarters, complete silence, analyzing every note played, every sound. So how would you explain this to people who are not musicians, what the value is of what you're doing, because they would say probably, another day, another dollar. And you would probably not say that. You'd probably say, well, hopefully more than $1, but I mean, that you're earning something else, I imagine.
Yeah, well, I think we end up becoming masters of self-criticism, which is a very positive thing, but can also turn toxic pretty quickly and pretty easily if you're not taking into consideration like the whole mindset around it. So if you walk into your practice room and you're like, oh great, here's another head banging situation where you're just, tearing your hair out and berating yourself for not getting it right quickly enough, that's a really unhealthy thing. And so every day you're like reinforcing these negative feelings towards this thing that you do every day of your life. So that's a recipe for being pretty unhappy. And I have struggled with that a lot. For me, being alone is not a problem because I'm such an introvert. So when concerts got canceled, I was kind of like, which sounds like so blasphemous as a performer to say, but it's true. I'm very, I love being alone, so not a problem. In terms of like the mindset of approaching practicing, one thing that really changed things a lot for me was advice that I got from my mentor, Zul Bailey, who suggested, and he does this himself, approaching practicing like problem solving. And when you do that, you're able to take the emotion out of it. You're able to take away the attachment of whether you get that passage right or not, and just say, okay, well, there is a problem. Let's figure out what that is. And then suddenly your brain gets switched into like a logical puzzle solving, problem solving, creative mode. And that's a lot more of like an interesting and satisfying place for me to live in. Because once you start like thinking about problem solving creatively, it gets a lot more interesting.
Wow. Okay. So Professor Lino Rivera wrote in the chat, well said, 4 exclamation points. It is a philosophy and a way of life. Let's go on to our next roundtable. This is, what is the daily routine of a musician? Is it healthy? Part 2, days performing. So tell us about that, Madalyn. What does that mean when you have a performance day?
Performance days. Well, today is a performance day. So yeah, I have a concert tonight. Performance days are a byproduct of the non-performance days. So I'm not a person who has a lot of, routines that I do the day of a concert or anything. the more nervous I am on the day of the concert reflects more of my preparation, I think, than the performance itself. So it's why I've gotten really serious about the daily routine being something that's going to pay off in 2 months on concert day. It's going to be, oh, I'm in a great place because of these last 2 months. So there's nothing you can really do on the day that's going to do too much. But I do think it's important on concert days to recenter on the audience and the fun and the fact that the music is for everyone and not just me, and that I do it for reasons that are bigger than myself. Those are things I think about when I have concerts.
Okay, Cicely, so performance days, are they harder or are they easier than the non-performance days?
Well, Madalyn's very evolved on this. I'm still working on it. For me, the problem with performing is that it's wrapped up so much in this larger experience of that is not just what you're doing when you get on stage. When I was with young concert artists for 3.5 years, and I did a ton of concerts, and and this still happens now when you're doing that. It's not just about playing. It's like, okay, well, does the presenter like me? Does the audience like me? Do the board like me, and the donors, and enough to invite me back? And like, how do I get invited back? How do I make sure that these people like me enough to invite me back? And like, I hope they think I play well. And so there's a lot of anxiety, social anxiety for me wrapped up in it. And there's a lot of like, you have to spend time and go to dinners and meet a whole lot of new people, and you're in a new city often, and there may not be food around, and that can be a big problem. So there's like this whole larger experience of performing for me that causes me a lot of anxiety. So I get on stage and I'm already exhausted. So a concert that I did recently, I was like practicing in my hotel room and just like sweating, and and just I thought to myself, what if I don't have to do this? Like, what if there are other ways to make money? Like, what if I just took that pressure off? Like, all these things where they have to go a certain way and they have to go so well. And suddenly I felt so much better, and I was able to get on stage and not worry about how I looked, what my like stage persona is, like, am I moving enough on stage? Do I look interesting while I'm playing? And I was just able to like execute, and it was like and I had a much better time like spending time with people afterwards, and like I actually had a great time. And so yeah, there's that was a breakthrough for sure. But yeah, it's about being able to separate out what you can control and what you can't, and most of it you can't actually, and just like being okay in your own skin.
So I wanted to ask you something since the beginning of the show about your grandfather, because we started the show with you telling us that he was an incredibly successful performing artist. Have you spoken to him about these issues and everything? Has he taken you under his wing, or I mean, because it seems like the path was already quite, well beaten before you got there. Is that right, Madalyn?
The last time I asked my grandfather about something, he said, "Well, you know what I learned today," which is his main thing. So our grandfather is difficult to reach. I haven't actually seen him in some number of years, but I think my best memories of him are when we were really young and we could take lessons with him when he still lived in Boston. And those memories are burned in, like I remember them so much. But he's a difficult communicator. We haven't ever had conversations like this with him.
Wow. Okay. And Cicely, you had lessons with him as a cellist. How did that go?
I did have some lessons with him. They were always really interesting, and I like he's a very interesting artist, he really is self-made in a lot of ways, and so doesn't come from necessarily a school of teaching, and has his own very personal and interesting solutions to things. So there's a ton of that, but I think he's also a narcissist, and so any interaction you have with him will inevitably come back to him and how he, just about him, and it's no longer about you and him helping you. It's about him and like, watch me do this. So yeah.
Okay.
It's difficult.
Wow. Okay. So let's take a look at a video of Madalyn accompanying herself on the piano. Fantastic. So this brings us to our last roundtable of the evening. What is your motivation? Why go through that hard work of the non-performance days and of the performance days? And Madalyn, I'd like to start with you. I imagine that the video you just made might answer that question. I could hear you saying, I could hear that the young girl you were when you said, I could do this all day playing violin. It seems like, and in your performances, this is you. I mean, the Madalyn who speaks is not as authentic as the Madalyn who plays music. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's worth 1,000 words. But first, before I say anything, I just want to quickly just shout out to Cicely, because Cicely is the reason that all of these videos exist, and the reason they look and sound amazing is because of her. She's the engineer behind all of this. So thank you, Cicely, 1,000 million times. But yeah, the biggest change for me in these like 30 years, I guess, has been going from a place of thinking, working, being motivated by everything other than the music. And from the time I was young, it was always, well, it's all about the music. And I never really understood that. And I'm starting to now. In these past few years, I have become so attached to my relationship with my own development, being happy in my vulnerabilities, not hiding my weaknesses, not feeling like I have to protect an image of something that I'm not. finding strength and weakness is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so my motivation every day is the fact that I'm in the middle of 1,000 personal projects on my violin right now. Every time I can pick up the violin and be like, oh, I can do this run of thirds in tune. It took me 8 months to do it, but that's amazing. And nobody's there to hear it and nobody's there to chronicle it. But that's why I do it. It's because I get to live this whole life of growing, learning, developing, and I'm doing that on my own and you know, with these influences and all these wonderful people around me too. But it's fundamentally that motivation to get better and to keep learning, to keep growing, and not to have some sort of external validation to make it all worth it.
Well, that sounds like quite a motivation to become fully Madalyn Parnas as she is as a musician, as a person. Seems to me that's quite a motivation and worthy of all of that hard work then. So, Cicely, over to you.
Yeah, so I think especially when you're in the arts, people say to you, oh, it must be so great to be following your passion. And you're like, yeah, it is. But it ends up being kind of such a broad thing to see what you're doing as. And I recently read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She has some really interesting ideas about creativity and the artist's relationship to it and ideas and everything. But one thing she says that I really like is it's much more helpful to follow your curiosity, because your curiosity gets a lot more specific and it takes a lot of the pressure off of like, well, this is my passion, so it should be all encompassing and fulfill every single one of my needs. And so what I've found by following my curiosity, that's where I've really found my love of specific things in music, and the motivation sort of takes care of itself in that case. Like, I don't feel like I need to get motivated to go arrange something, because I just want to do it and I just enjoy doing it and it's fun. So motivation doesn't become a problem with that. Motivation has been a problem with practicing because of like the negative messaging and the difficulty of it and the baggage associated with it. But with these other things that I'm discovering, the motivation is just there because I'm interested.
Wow, so fantastic. And the introduction that that description of this show talked about Bill Deresiewicz's book, Excellent Sheep, and how elite young kids were being sent to they wanted to get into the Ivy League schools, but that what was missing was that curiosity, like Cicely said, and that being daring enough to follow your curiosity, even if you're so scared you don't know where it leads, and you know you've got so much at stake that you want to take the path of least resistance. So fantastic. It's so very nice to have this conversation with you. Before we go, let's have a video of Cicely performing a commission of hers. This is Miniatures by Jocelyn Hagan. Fantastic. So thank you so very much to Madalyn and Cicely for a conversation about two artists who are becoming, in their own way, I believe we started by talking about Leslie Parnas, a renowned cellist, and generations have changed, obviously. Here we have the third generation of the Parnas family, and it's clear that their artistry is also going to be as significant and meaningful and inspiring as that of the Leslie Parnas generation. So thank you so very much for an intimate conversation and portrait of your family, and for inspiring us each to, like we said, follow our own path and do work through those hard non-performance days and performance days, and say it's all worth it. And thank you again. Thank you so much to Cicely, to Madalyn.
Thank you so much for
Vivian.
having us. This has been such a gift. Thank you.
So let's take a look at how we can stay in touch with Madalyn and Cicely, if I can get it over here. So their websites are here. It's cicelyparnas.com. And here, anybody who has any questions, they can get in touch with her by going to contact. Is that right, Cicely?
That's right.
And so they just fill in this form. And also it says free lessons. So people can take lessons from you for free?
Yes, once a month, I offer 2 free 30-minute lessons. It's the first Saturday of each month, and the rest of the time I have lesson openings that people can just book anytime they want. Like there's no obligation to have regular lessons. If they just want one 30-minute lesson or 1 hour lesson, that's all totally fine. So yeah, it's kind of a new scheduling thing that I'm trying out.
And they don't have to have any prior knowledge, or they don't have to know anything. They just have to have an instrument, or even it says basic music theory lessons. So you're looking for anybody who's just interested in music?
Yeah,
or...
absolutely. Open to anyone who has an interest and is following their own curiosity about music.
Fantastic. So that is cicelyparnas.com. Let's go over to Madalyn. We have madalynparnas-möller.com, and here's her website. Madalyn, we can just contact you by clicking on contact?
Yes, you can fill out that contact page there. Also, both Cicely and I have Facebook and Instagram accounts. So if you follow us or subscribe to us there, you can reach us as well.
Fantastic. So thank you once again. Thank you once again to Cicely and to Madalyn. Let's take a look at what we have next week coming up. Julio Mendívil, How to Be an Anti-Racist Musician. Often musicians are thought of as superwomen and men who have the ability to turn hate into love and transform the coldest, most insensitive heart into the warmest and most feeling. Just think about the biblical story of Saul's violence being pacified by David's magical serenades. If that be the case, then converting a racist mindset into one in which people are, quote, not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, should be a breeze. What if the musician in question is unaware that her or his own perspective is innately, however, yet unconsciously racist? That, ironically, rather than inspiring society to greater harmony, her or his undetected racist outlook strengthens divisive structural racism in society? Yes, even gender-conscious ethnomusicologists can be racist, as Julio Mendívil, professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Vienna, will tell us. Come welcome Julio to our show for a special roundtable about an elite form of racism only found in academia. As always, all information about upcoming shows may be found at www.simeonmorrow.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Madalyn Parnas-Möller and to Cicely Parnas. Thank you very much to Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California. Thank you to Agnieszka Rivolet for her support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants, for making this all worthwhile. From Vienna, Austria, from Minneapolis, Minnesota, from Los Angeles in the Bay Area, California, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.